a few weeks ago, we had a man here from TaylorMade Golf who designs golf clubs for some of the biggest professionals on the tour.
Sure.
Rory McIlroy is one of them. And Jeremy was on the panel with him talking about the comparison between developing golf clubs for golfers and developing equipment for race car drivers. There is there's more of a crossover than I ever thought.
Well, you think about like design work in general, right? Like there's a lot of the same tools, whether it be, simulation tools for, we're trying to simulate what happens to the car going around the racetrack. Those guys are trying to simulate what happens when the driver and the ball make contact on the driver face.
Have you gotten to the point where I don't want to say you complete each other's sentences, but you kind of know how each other thinks in terms of strategy and things to do during the race?
Well, that was a very Titanic moment there, but
Welcome into Backstretch Banter with RFK Racing on Sirius XM NASCAR Radio, Channel 90. I'm Chris Childers. RFK's Mike Massaro alongside is my fantastic co-host today, fresh off a trip to Mexico City. They say Ciudad de Mexico, and he was there. Jeremy Bullins is our guest today. He is our featured spotlight guest, and he is the crew chief of the number 6 for Brad Keselowski, the Ford Mustang, which will have Kroger on it. Actually, BuildSubmarines.com. I think it's going to be Ryan Priest with the Kroger. Nexitol this week in Pocono for the 17 and Build Subs, which always looks really clean on the number 6. Let's welcome him in, the crew chief for the number 6, Jeremy Bullins. His first time on the program. Jeremy, good to have you, man. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. We have a lot to talk about. Certainly your first season here with Brad and the team, but we're just coming off a very unique race. And I think we need to spend some time on it because there's got to be some stories. There's got to be some layers to it. NASCAR took a chance with a race in Mexico, and there was some logistics to it. Overall, it was an interesting day for RFK. Brad finished 25th, but at times was running pretty damn well. Chris had the best finish of all the cars at number 10. But your perception on the race, the day, and what it was like to take a NASCAR team into Mexico City, sir.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we were talking a little bit off camera before we started here. Like, once you get there, it's like any other race. Like, once you got to the track, I mean, we could have easily been at Sonoma or Coda or any other road course. Like, the racetrack is great, and the racetrack was fine. I mean, the garage is nice. Like, all that's fine. It's just the logistical challenges of the not only that weekend, but the couple of weeks leading up to it, and even what it does to us the week after, because the trucks aren't even back yet, right? So, really one of the things that we talked about is this is okay, this is fine, but man, this race could really use like an off week, either the week before or the week after, just because we had to have the Mexico cars finished and sent to Michigan to go straight from Michigan to Chicago, or I'm sorry, from Michigan to Mexico. So, that's really 2 weeks of work in 1 week for the guys and the shop and the entire team to get that done and get those cars out and down the road. And then here we are Tuesday afternoon, the truck's not going to get back till 5 o'clock. So, there's stuff that we're waiting on to finish the Pocono car to get ready for this week. So I think not only that, but just the extra time of travel. We typically fly on a Friday, come back Sunday night, where now we're leaving early Thursday morning and people are getting home late Monday night, and it's a long trip, and it's we're very institutionalized. I use that Shawshank reference all the time. We're very institutionalized in what we do, and change is not change can so it's just different. It's not the end of the world. We'll get through it, but it would be a lot easier if there was an off weekend on either side of it.
How do you adjust, considering you have no choice?
Well, that's the thing, right? Like, they're going to race with or without us, so we've got to figure out how to get it done. So the big thing is making sure. I was very happy that there was only one thing that we didn't have the whole weekend. So it's okay, we did pretty good. If there's only one thing we were missing, that's pretty good. So, and it was something that was not performance related at all. So it was actually the pit wall banner. Like it didn't make the truck. So guys were resourceful and they made one out of the spare wrap. So you never would have known it, but it was one of those things that was like, okay, like put that on the checklist for next year.
There's nothing the 16 can't do.
That's right.
Clearly.
We'll get through it.
They'll find a way. Yeah. No question about it. And they did exactly that this past weekend on their way to Mexico City, at Mexico City, and on their way back. It was a great adventure, but now it's time for Pocono, which is a place that the 6 team and everybody at RFK knows very well. So I'm sure it'll be nice to be back in the comforts of Pocono coming up this weekend. I would imagine everybody's ready to get back just because of the fact that you talk about in this world, and I think every world, people are creatures of habit, and that's certainly right smack in the middle of the season kind of took you out of that habit. For you, as this team has tried to find its groove, tried to find its footing, and make a run to get to the playoff and win a race, did it feel like a disruption for you having to go to Mexico? Or, I'm not even going to lead you. How did it feel with that race placed where it was from a competition perspective?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was a disruption in any way. I would just say that, if I look at our season, COTA went okay for us. Like, we finished 15th. The cool shirt failed, so Brad was tough as nails to gut that one out and finish where we did. But we felt like we had a better car than 15th, even at that. So went to Mexico feeling pretty confident in what we had, and honestly, I felt pretty good after practice was over with. We just didn't qualify great, and it just kind of put us in a bad spot. And even the end of the last run, I was like, wow, we're 25th, but we're not falling off nearly as bad as a lot of these guys in front of us, but we're just too far back to do anything about it. So, some mixed emotions about how we finished there, but excited to get to Pocono because I feel like, you look at Michigan and Kansas and Charlotte and some of these places, I feel like we've had really good cars. I feel like that's sort of in the wheelhouse of where our strengths are right now, and I look ahead to, Pocono and Atlanta and, some of these places that are coming up that I feel like are solid shots for us to win a race.
I'm always curious about strategies, especially at a road course. How much time did you spend plotting out your strategy? There's some that were trying to, limit their number of stops. There were others who were trying to take advantage of track position by, extending their runs. How did you lay out your strategy?
Well, I mean, that's the first thing you look at when you go to those places is how much fuel do you need? How often do I have to stop for fuel? That started out as a 3-stopper, but the cautions turned it into a 2-stopper for some guys. And we were in a spot where we could have 2-stopped it as well. But in that stint where you were setting up to 2-stop it, we just weren't very good. We were kind of falling back. We were losing a couple spots here and there. So we took the opportunity to put tires on, and had that next run gone green longer than it did, I feel like we were in a pretty good spot there where it was kind of going to go our way a little bit. And it wasn't going to be the winning strategy by any means, but it was going to get us a better finish than where we wound up. And when the cautions fell the way they did, it's okay, we're just going to get what we can get out of this and get out of here. But sometimes that's how they go. But, a lot of times, in Pocono, it's kind of the same way. You look at, you're trying to set up for that last pit stop of the day to be the fastest. The last couple of years, 2 tires has won that race at the end of it. And so you're trying to, put yourself in position to where I can do 2 tires on just enough fuel to get to the end on the last stop. And, I'm sure it's going to be the same way this weekend. So,
the other factor too, and I don't think this has too much to do with fuel, but there was rain in the forecast, right? And we knew that it may come. You didn't know when it would come. We had all the wet tires out there. How did that factor into your
Yeah, that was probably
plan?
One of the biggest things that was leaving there. Okay, well, if we come back here, what do I have to do differently? I feel like we have some really good weather tools and radar tools when we're in the States. And I struggled all weekend. I spent, I bought this app, and I talked to friends in the military and friends that are fishermen, and I'm like, what tool, what apps do you guys use? Because this is awful. Yeah. It was, there are tools that I have when we're racing in the U.S. that I feel like, when you get that mist, that I can still see it, and I just couldn't get, the internet was slower. And the apps just weren't as good as what we have here, I felt like. And so, it was kind of a struggle to know, all all right, when's it going to start raining and when's it going to stop? Like that to me, that was one of the things that was an interesting challenge that I didn't see that coming, I guess.
We all want to know what weather apps those are, but that's proprietary information. We're going to keep it right here.
Exactly.
Exactly. That's top secret stuff. It is interesting how that's something I wouldn't have ever thought of. Like, which weather app do I need to have so I can anticipate what do I need to do from a tire perspective and all that comes with it. It happened, right? I think that's the best way to say it. It happened. NASCAR took a chance. I will say visually, and I wasn't there. I was watching it on TV. It looked cool. You know, as somebody who enjoys Formula One, I felt like I was watching an F1 race with my favorite guys. You know, just different cars running around the track. So from that perspective, I enjoyed it. But I'm not the one that's driving the hauler, and I'm not the one that's trying to use the weather app, and I'm not the one doing any of that. So completely different opinion of the race. When you look at races like that, and certainly you've been around it for a while. You've been a crew chief for a bunch of different guys, including Brad back in Penske. When you look at where we've gone and some of the chances that NASCAR has taken, from your perspective, particularly as a crew chief, Chicago is coming up in a couple of weeks. I think that's year 3. So we're getting, a little sample size now of how that looks. And does it add value to NASCAR? But from your perspective, like Mexico City obviously was a risk. What do you think about what they're doing?
Yeah, I think for me, I kind of wondered the first year we went to Chicago, how's this going to go? Who's going to show up? And Chicago was the one that stood out to me because I was pleasantly surprised, and I felt so bad for him because that first year we got all that rain. And it just poured, right? But there were so many people there that showed up for that race, and it was like, wow, okay, there's actually a good crowd of people here that want to see this, right? So, and that's really what you judge it off of is if the people are there, it's kind of the opposite of, if you build it, they will come. It's more like if you're going to come, we'll come too, right? Right. If you guys are going to show up, we're happy to be here, right? And
sure.
And so it's, that was great, and you felt so bad for those people getting rained on trying to watch us race, and wish they'd gotten better weather. But I think that's the cool part is going to some of these places. But the thing that I really like is, and it's kind of funny if people know where I grew up, that the Bowman Grey Clash this year was the first time I'd ever been to Bowman Grey.
No way.
And I grew up racing 25 minutes away from there my whole life. But
no way.
Well, I was dirt racing, so there was. In that area, there were 2 groups of people: the people that went to the dirt track and the people that went to Bowman Grey, and I was at the dirt track. So, first time I'd ever been set foot on the property was when we raced there in the Clash. So,
wow.
Yeah, but but I love the fact that we brought some of the history of the sport by going there, right? To me, I love the fact that we go to new places and new markets and all that kind of stuff. But I also feel like it's important that we stick to our roots and kind of pay homage to some of the places that created us in the first place, right? So I thought it was great that the Trucks and Xfinity went back to Rockingham this year. I think that's cool to have that mix, right? Yes, we need to make the sport more global, and there's a lot of opportunities for us to do those kinds of things, not without their logistical challenges, but at the same time, let's not lose sight of who we are, with North Wilkesboro and things like that.
It seems like there's a decent balance, though.
I think so, and I think it's important that we keep that. I guess that's my point.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. I don't know if you were able to take a glimpse of the podium afterwards, but I saw that on the way out, and people on television certainly saw it. That was remarkable. Let me tell you, that was a spectacle.
Yeah, it's interesting. I watch a lot of F1 races, and it's like. I thought it was really cool. I think it's something that we should reserve for just those type of events that are kind of the international thing. I don't think, again, and that's just my opinion, right? I think, for me, it's let's stick to what we are, but every now and then when you have something that's a special event, I don't necessarily think that's something that we should do every week. But I think for certain events, it probably makes sense.
All right, I want to roll the tape back. Your first time at Bowman Grey?
Yeah, 100%.
Your racing friends from that neighborhood where you grew up, they must have been finally we got you there.
Where you been?
Well,
where you been?
Listen,
Jeremy?
if you know anything about Bowman Grey, Burt Myers and Jason Myers, we all went to the same high school. Burt graduated a year before me, Jason a year after, and never been to the racetrack with those guys ever until.
Wow.
Bert was there with us at the Clash, and like I've known these guys forever, but like it was just different. Like I was working on a dirt late model and at 311 Speedway in Madison, North Carolina, about 30 minutes away from there, and never went to. We didn't go. Like we didn't go there. We were dirt racing. So
well, those guys must have thought it was pretty cool in February when they finally got you there.
Well, I'm sure, but I'm sure.
What were your first impressions? Like, was it everything you thought it was going to be growing up 25 miles away? Like, did you enjoy it?
Well, I mean, you're racing around a football field, right? So, like, it
actually, it was uncomfortable.
It actually raced better than I thought it would.
Okay.
I liked it better than the Coliseum because I felt like you could move around a little more and it was a little more racy. The Clash when we were in LA was a lot more beating and banging, a little harder to get around. Like at least you could make a pass on somebody, so I like that part. And like I said, just what we did in LA was cool to build that racetrack and put that on in a different market. That was really cool. But I did enjoy the historical side of it, knowing that was one of the places that where the sport came from, right? So that part was pretty cool. So
there's a lot of people that were asking me if I knew if any of the drivers or the teams were out and about in the city. There's a lot of people that ask me, like, they went to Mexico City. Isn't that scary? Da-da-da-da-da. We all hear the news and all that kind of stuff. What was it like? Did you guys
It's like
go
a big
out?
city. It's like
anywhere else,
I think
right?
any big city you go to, there are parts of it that are perfectly fine, and if you turn down the wrong street, it's probably not a good idea, right? So like, I mean, I could say the same thing about multiple big cities, but I'm not gonna. But
but it felt like anywhere else.
To some extent, yeah. It's just like the language barrier makes it more difficult, right? But I mean, I know some of my guys walked around, and I know one of them. There was a article that came out over the weekend about this taco place that got a Michelin star. I don't know if you saw this or not, but my engineers walked there. It's like a mile from our hotel, and they said it was great. Honestly, like I didn't venture too far, mainly because of the schedule, and a lot of times like Saturday afternoon, like I said, I came back, I took a nap, I woke up, I watched my nephew race at Millbridge on my phone, and went to our team dinner and called it a night because I knew I had a long day Sunday. So I mean, I haven't heard too many horror stories of people walking around. I've heard a couple, but nothing crazy, nothing you wouldn't expect in any big city.
Yeah, a number of our team members, some of the younger ones, like to explore. They really enjoyed it. I was like Jeremy.
Did you try the tacos, Mike?
All right, so let's talk about the tacos, shall we?
I'm very curious. Yes.
So there was a taco stand inside the racetrack. Did you partake?
I heard about this. I've seen some of the food from there, but like I'm not gonna wait in a line that long. I'm just like. Every time I walked over there, I'm like, half the garage is in this line. Like, I don't have time for this. So, like, I did not. They looked amazing. I'm sure they were great, but
they were delicious.
My timing was horrible of trying to. Well, good for you, Mike. I'm glad that worked out for you.
Were they carne? Were they pollo?
I have no idea. They were special though. I'll tell you that.
Was it meat or chicken?
So I think it was a pork and a beef. Yes, but it was good. See, I'm adventurous like that.
You think?
I'm Italian, so food.
So you didn't get to order?
Eat anything. Yes, I think it was pork. I think it was barbacoa. Barbacoa was pork, right? I think. Anyways,
yes,
pork and there was beef, and it was when you go to one of those places where they serve gyros or gyros, and the lamb is on a spit, if you will.
Yeah,
that's the way.
I saw a
this
picture
was.
with that where they carve the meat off as they're making the taco.
Yeah. Exactly. So there was two, and they were marinated. So one was in a red marinade, and the other was in a browner marinade, and they were on the spits, and they were cooking all morning long until they were finally ready to serve around noon. And so I finally was able to get about 10 minutes, and I snuck into the media side. The media side.
The media
was,
guys. This is what I was saying earlier. Like they get all the little perks, and
Well, I don't get them anymore, so I kind of cheated.
Like
here,
Bob,
right?
Pockrass had the time of his life down there.
You might not have got the wrestling tickets, but you got tacos.
I did not get wrestling tickets, no, but I got the tacos. But so the point I was making.
Hold on. What are you talking about wrestling?
We'll get
So some of the I saw some posts on X about some of the media guys were at one of the wrestling events downtown. So clearly they'd gotten invited. I think maybe they bought their own tickets. I'm not going to.
I will say this: in the spirit of the wrestling, all the drivers were given masks. The masks that the wrestlers golfers
Libre.
wear. Yes, exactly. And we have a beautiful mask, and our team.
You do?
Who wore it? Our team engineer?
Our race engineer,
Yeah.
Andrew, wore that for the better part of qualifying. So he drew a lot of attention to himself. It was pretty funny.
It was
Was
great.
he sweating an unbelievable
Fortunately, it
amount
wasn't
wearing
that hot, so I don't think he
Oh,
was
was it
he was
not? Okay,
uncomfortable.
good.
But like he was pretty proud of himself wearing that mask around.
I'm
so.
sure that he was.
It was cool. It was in Castrol colors.
It was.
Really?
It matched the car.
It was perfect.
It matched his uniform. It matched every. Yeah, it was great.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of love that, and I love that there was a Lucha Libre event that people were involved with.
Oh yeah, there was a bunch of drivers, and I saw like the pictures I saw were all like drivers and media people. It's like, oh yeah, like no offense, but like we're too busy for that.
As the PR guy, I did offer the mask to Brad and to Jeremy. And, they just.
Were you at the wrestling, Mike?
I did not, as Jeremy alluded to. We don't get the tickets.
Okay.
So no.
Gotcha.
Did not go to the wrestling match.
All right. I have a lot more questions about Mexico and Pocono and the season. Chris Childers, Mike Massaro from RFK. We are hanging out with Jeremy Bullins, the crew chief of the number 6 car. We got more with Jeremy when we come back right here on NASCAR Channel 9. We are back here on Backstretch Banter with RFK Racing, Sirius XM NASCAR Channel 90. Chris Childers, Mike Massaro of RFK, and we have the crew chief of the number 6 for Brad Keselowski. Jeremy Bullins is with us. Pocono is this weekend. Mexico City is behind us now, but certainly had some stories and some new experiences that people will probably be able to talk about forever. That time we went to Mexico City, not sure if it's going to be back on the schedule or not, but if this was a one-timer, certainly there were some fun stories, including, Jeremy, I heard it was like a movie. Now, very routine, but I heard the number 6 hauler was getting down there, getting to the border, got a little routine search. Any good stories from the guys? I mean, that had to be kind of a unique experience.
Yeah, so it's actually the 60 that got searched, and the
60. Gotcha.
From my understanding of all the Cup teams, the 9 and the 60 were the ones that got searched, and so one of the logistical things that we had to do ahead of time is fill out like a customs manifest of everything that's in the hauler, and so they will randomly pick a hauler to go through and make sure what you declared is what you're transporting, right? So my understanding is it was pretty simple. They had to unload the bottom where we carry all the toolboxes and all that kind of stuff. But I heard there, maybe some folks were taking pictures with uniforms and stuff in the hauler. Like, I mean, why wouldn't you at that point, right? But it seemed like it was pretty tame and not too hard on the guys. At least they didn't have to unload the cars. That would have been a lot of work at that point. But yeah, it's just part of the process.
I mean, why would you miss an opportunity to do something for the gram, as they say, right?
So,
I hope there's Border Patrol pictures.
Of guys trying on fire suits. Yeah, exactly.
There's Ryan's fire suit.
There's got to be somewhere. There's got to be somewhere.
I'm sure if I search hard enough, I could probably find it somewhere on the internet. Those guys wearing the Ryan Priest gear for this past weekend. But you know what? That's kind of the fun of it all. Everybody, it's a new experience, new country, and that kind of plays into the whole thing. So there was a big team dinner on Saturday, and I got to believe that's a little unique. I would think that most, and maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but most weekends you guys do your own thing. Did it feel like a little, Thanksgiving, little holiday, everybody get together for dinner on Saturday?
Yeah, it was good. You think about it, like a lot of times the picker guys don't fly in until race morning. And there's a lot of times where the 6 guys, we may go to dinner on a weekend, we'll pick a night and the whole 6 team will go to dinner, but it's very rare that you have everybody in the whole company that's there, the night before a race. So I thought that was a good opportunity. We felt like it was a good opportunity to provide a meal for, everyone the night before the race. And I think the hotel catered it, did a really good job and had a lot of options and, a lot of good food and just a good opportunity for everybody to kind of hang out together the night before the race. And like I said, it's very rare that everybody's there in that setting, the night before a race. So it was interesting. It was good.
Pit crew guys usually don't get to the races till the day of.
Yeah, the over-the-wall guys usually, unless it's a West Coast race, they fly in race morning, because it's usually, an hour or 2 flight, so there's really no reason for them to come the night before. The West Coast stuff, when it's a longer flight, we'll fly them in on Saturday or the day before the race, just so they're a little more adjusted and a little more well rested. Some of those long trips is too much to do on a Sunday morning before a West Coast race.
And it was a great. And you mentioned that dinner too, Chris. It was a great social event and a great way to kind of intermingle the various departments that run a race.
Was that tacos too, Mike? What was it?
There were tacos. It was everything. There were some tacos. There was a little bit of everything. It was enjoyable. But what I took away from it was the fact that you could, have conversations with people that you wouldn't otherwise have to be able to have conversations with, because on race day, people are busy. People have jobs to do. So to be able to get away from the racetrack and have, conversations about other things besides what's happening that day, talk about people's families, get to understand, what they're dealing with at home, or who they really are. I think that was a really good opportunity that night to really bond as a team.
Yeah, honestly, a lot of the conversation was like, what have you done or seen since you've been here, right? Like, that was kind of, there was a lot of talk about that as well.
Do you guys do that any other time? Is there like a holiday time when everybody, or is that kind of a rare, truly special thing to do this past Saturday?
So we have like the quarterly luncheons in the shop, and pretty much everybody's there for that, whether it's pit crew, traveling mechanics, and the shop folks. So that's nice as well to get everybody together. But it's pretty rare to get the entire company on the road out to a dinner like that. Like that's a pretty unique situation.
Agreed.
I'm glad that everybody had a chance to get together and talk about what happened in Mexico and all the little logistical things. And we had a race. It happened. And for Chris Buescher, certainly not a bad day. Finished P10. Brad and Ryan had their mixed bag of results, but it is on to Pocono, which certainly is going to be pretty exciting. I'm curious what it's like for you, Jeremy, as somebody who's been in this profession for so long. I mean, you've been with Brad a couple of times now with different race teams, and this race team happens to have a K on it, with Brad being a co-owner. What has that dynamic been like for you guys being back together with a different team, but this time it's the K and RFK?
Yeah, it's funny. Like I tell everybody that he's heard me say this, but I've worked with him in 3 phases of his life, right? Like, when I worked with him on the Xfinity car at Penske, he was driving the Cup car. I was the crew chief in the Xfinity car, and I always took the Xfinity car. I didn't want it to be a distraction for the Cup guys. I wanted it to come be fun. Let's win some races, but like, I'm not going to take a lot of your time because the Cup car is a priority. So we had we worked great together. We had a lot of fun together, won a lot of races together, and it was just that deal was kind of, we took it very seriously, and we wanted to win every time we unloaded, but we are also just having a good time and having fun with it. The Cup deal gets a little more serious. There's a lot more competition, and when I worked with Brad in the 2 car at Penske, like he owned KM, he had married Paige and has kids, and like has a lot going on, right? And so it's like, okay, like now we've got to have our time together to work on racing and be focused, but I also respect all this other stuff you have going on, right? And so now the 3rd phase is like, I'm working for Brad. Like, he's driving my car, but I'm working for Brad, right? So there's like, all right, am I talking to the driver? Am I talking to the owner here? Like, which one is it? So it kind of turns into, it's just different, right? So, but the thing about it is, and I think the thing that's made us successful is like, he's not afraid to tell me if he feels strongly about something. I'm not afraid to tell him if he feels strongly about something, and somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose those conversations, but like, we don't let it affect us at all. It's just part of that conversation. We've always had a really good working relationship like that. I'm not afraid to tell him if I think something's wrong, or if he's not afraid to tell me if he thinks something should be a different way, right? So that part's been constant through all of it.
After spending as much time with Brad as you have, and over the years, have you gotten to the point where you're, I mean, I don't want to say you complete each other's sentences, but you kind of know how each other thinks in terms of strategy and things to do during the race?
Well, that was a very like Titanic moment there, but like, no, I mean, like, no, like we're not like, riding on the front of a boat together or anything like that. But it is it's very easy to communicate, right? Like, like I know what he's feeling in the car. I know what to, I can kind of anticipate what he's going to say before he says it. And there's things that he will do that are hard to explain, that you can only explain if you've been around them and communicated with him and talked to him, and things that you'll see him do in the race car that you only recognize if you've worked with him for a while. So, I mean, it's pretty easy as far as the communication side of it, to be honest.
Titanic moment.
Well, when they're on the front of the boat and they're like,
I'm the king of the world.
I knew what he was talking about.
Yeah,
like, exactly.
I mean, we're completing
he's
each other's sentences here.
He's not propping Brad up.
It was a metaphor.
Exactly.
It was a metaphor.
Yeah, I know. But
there's no Kate Winslet type moments happening in at Pocono this weekend is what he's trying to say.
I honestly hope one of them says they're the king of the world after Pocono. I'm looking forward to that.
Truly do as well.
Both of us have.
Yes, I do too.
It's a track that both of us have some very good memories at, but not together yet. So hopefully we can change that. Mm-hmm.
Well, hopefully we can change it coming up this weekend. Let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk about Pocono, what it's like to set up a car for the Tricky Triangle. Certainly you have some good memories there. And it would be really nice to create maybe the best ever this weekend. But let's take a break. We'll talk about Pocono as we turn our attention to the Tricky Triangle with Jeremy Bullins next, right here on Backstretch Banter with RFK Racing. We're back here. It is Backstretch Banter with RFK Racing, Sirius XM NASCAR, Channel 90. Chris Childers, Mike Massaro. Jeremy Bullins, our guest today. He is the crew chief of the number 6 Ford Mustang. This week we go to Pocono. Going to have a cool wrap. BuildSubmarines.com is the sponsor that's going to be on the hood this weekend. An incredible company. It gives you a chance to legitimately build submarines. Start a great career and help your country in the process. Kroger and Scott 1000 will be on the 60 and Nexitol on the number 17 at the Tricky Triangle this weekend. Jeremy, unique track, certainly. It's a traditional track, but one that's always quirky and fun. It's the Tricky Triangle. We got 3 magical turns. I always joke when I see the Where's Turn 4 sign there on the wall. But Pocono, getting set up for it. Give us an idea from your background, perspective, your success, what it's like to get a car prepared for this weekend.
Yeah, it's always a compromise, right? Like you never feel like you're great in all 3 corners. And we were talking about this earlier. It seems like, practice will be different than the race. Qualifying will be different than practice. Like what you focus on, it seems like this car, especially with the next gen car, like you really struggle to get through the tunnel turn with ride quality. The rear limiters will kind of bottom out through there, and it's kind of rough through there if your car's not, balanced right. Turn 3 is huge in the race. Like the cars are really good there. Get into turn 3 with a lot of speed. They don't get tight in the center, and they exit turn 3 very well, which sets up a lot of straightaway speed for that long straightaway. So that, those are the things that I'm probably going to prioritize. I feel like turn 1, it's super important, and you got to get through there well. But I feel like there's probably more lines you can move around, and the drivers can kind of find a way through there. Especially qualifying, it seems like it's pretty forgiving. Like if the driver can carry momentum through there, like you don't necessarily worry about the rest of the lap as much. Like if you miss turn 2 or you miss turn 3, it's probably not going to be a very good qualifying lap. But you can certainly mess up turn 1 as well. So it's certainly a challenge from a setup perspective. You try to make everything as good as it can be without hurting something else too much, and that's one of the things that we try to use our simulation tools for, is to figure out what things affect what corner the most and how we can make the best compromises that we can make.
That's interesting the way you put that. What always has stood out for me at Pocono is the Long Pond straightaway, that giant, lengthy straightaway, and how much speed you're carrying into turn number 1. How much of a challenge is that to try to get that balance in the race car to go through there as fast as you can, knowing how hard you're going into that corner?
Well, and that's the thing. Like if you don't exit turn 3 very well, your front stretch is awful, and if you exit turn 3 very well, if you exit turn 3 good, a lot of times you can use turn 1 as a passing zone, because you can get a run and get beside somebody and take the position away going into 1. So leaving turn 3 is very important in the race, because it just sets up so many things. If you go back and watch races, like you see a lot of passes made from turn 3 into 1 just because of how much momentum difference there are between 2 cars leaving. And then like it's, the braking zone into 1 and trying to get in the corner with the right amount of speed to set up the exit of 2, and it's just a constant battle to keep the momentum up.
You can imagine it is indeed, as it has been monikered, a tricky triangle.
Yeah.
Yes,
sure.
yes, it is very tricky. How would you describe Brad and his skill set and how he, over the years, he's raced a lot on these three turns? How would you describe him as a driver and how he specifically translates to Pocono?
I think Brad is very, like his personality in general is just very calculated. I think he's very intelligent. He's very talented as a driver, but he has tried to take all the experience that he has and make himself better with it. And I think that's one of the cool things about it is he's a student of the game. He studies everything. He wants to be better. He wants to get better at the detail stuff, and he does a lot of the detail things very well. And that's just a product of the effort that he puts in. And I think the guys that are really good, the drivers that are really good at this thing, understand the difference from 11 o'clock practice on a Saturday morning to what their car needs to drive like at 2 o'clock on Sunday afternoon or 3 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. And like that, those are some of my favorite memories of working with Brad over the years is, like a 9 o'clock practice on Friday morning in Kentucky for a night race on Saturday night. And, he'll tell you, all right, it's driving this bad now, but I'm not sure that's bad enough for what I need tomorrow night, right? And you make a change that for these conditions is wrong, but it's right for tomorrow night, right? And so like that's what separates a lot of these drivers is knowing what their car needs. And a lot of the veteran guys are I think about Kyle Busch and the ones that understand the cars and I think we have two guys that are really good at it with Buescher and Priest. That's one of the things I've been very impressed with coming here working with them is how well they understand what their car needs and what they're getting out of practice and what they're going to need for race day. And that's one of the things that Brad does very well.
How much do you pay attention to the other guys and what they're doing? I think that's interesting from a crew chief perspective. You talk about how Chris and Ryan are pretty good at understanding what the car needs. How much time do you spend in and around what's happening with the 17 and the 60?
Well, a lot, and that's one of the things that, coming to RFK that, Josh Sell and I talked a lot about, Brad and I talked a lot about was, like to be successful in this sport, like all the teams have to work together. Like it's not like it used to be where we had a lot of testing and a lot of practice and, every team could go try whatever they wanted and figured out what works for them. Like you have to rely on each other and you have to leverage the time that you have and hopefully go into weekends, with each team trying something a little different so we can talk about it and get smarter faster. And the teams that I've been on that were successful in the past, the teams worked really well together. And that's what we're doing a really good job of. I feel like here at RFK is, it's been great to work with Derek and Scott and get to know those guys and just kind of understanding how everybody thinks and learn from each other and bounce off ideas off each other. And, there hardly a week goes by where, somebody doesn't stop by my office or I'll stop by theirs and be like, what do you think about this? Or, like it's just moving everybody forward is what it's doing. And it's exciting for the future of what we have going on here because I feel like, with everybody working together and kind of sharing notes and being an open book that we're going to get where we want to get to faster than if we were three teams trying to do it on our own.
How close are the three teams in terms of setup?
I'd say there's weeks where it's like super close, and there's weeks where, like they're a lot of times what winds up happening is you'll be like really, really close, but Brad may want the car a little bit tighter than Chris or vice versa. But like so it's you'll be really, really close on a lot of things, and one or two things a little bit different just to get the balance that each driver's looking for.
It's interesting. I'm sure it's a similar, but like you said, little tweaks for everybody to be comfortable in that car. And I'm sure in hindsight, you probably, question yourself a little bit on your personal preferences. Talking to Jeremy Bullins, he is the crew chief for the number 6. We do have a in-season tournament that is coming up soon. Atlanta is going to be the first race. Do we know much about that? This is new. This is different. I know there's money at stake, but from your perspective, what does this look like?
Yeah, so my understanding of it is it's sort of like an NCAA kind of bracket. There, like there's 32 teams. There are 3 races leading up to the start of the challenge. Dictates where you're going to be seated. I think we're 10th going into Pocono, so however that shakes out at Pocono will dictate where we are seated once it starts. I think it's single elimination, so I think like like each week you win or lose your bracket, or, your match, I guess, and whoever wins it all, I guess the team or the crew chief gets $1 million in cash. I think it's the crew chief. I'm not sure, but
that's what I read.
That's what I read too. But no, I think it's $1 million to the team that wins it. But hey, like if they want to write the check to me, that's cool too. Whatever. But
well, I'm sure that will affect the way you call the races if that check's written to you directly, for sure.
Well,
but in all honesty, it's
that might
not,
influence it, but it's not. In all honesty, it goes to the team, and I mean it's a very cool thing that they're doing. I think it adds a little extra spice to what we got going on. But at the end of the day, our push is to win a race and get in the playoffs, and that's the same for all three of our teams. But I think if we do that, if we're running good enough to win every week, this challenge will take care of itself, and hopefully we can get that $1 million to RFK.
$1 million is nothing to scoff at, that's for sure.
No,
absolutely not.
But as you mentioned, I mean, the goal is to win the race. It's no different than it was in week 3 or week 4. And
honestly, it's a lot like we talk about points, right? Like in like the old points format when it was a 36 race season. Like if you're running up front and you're running good every week, that stuff takes care of itself, right? But this format's a little different, where right now I'm not really worried about points, because where we are in points, like we need to win a race, and so and honestly, even once you get into the playoffs, the format still rewards winning. If you win your way through the playoffs, you're probably going to have a shot at a championship.
Just win. At this point,
that's right.
The number 6.
It's all that matters.
Win,
that's right.
And everything else will take care of itself. And nice little shot of momentum will come along with that if this team gets into victory lane. And we're all rooting for that to happen. But this week and next week in Atlanta and the in-season, you're not going to change the way you manage the race at all. It's all about getting this team to the playoff and having success. Beyond that, Jeremy Bullins, our guest here, he is the crew chief for the number 6 with Brad Keselowski. Coming off Mexico, we've got Pocono this weekend. As like I mentioned earlier, buildsubmarines.com is going to be on the hood. So we'll finish up talking a little racing in a second, but I also want to ask you about the U.S. Open. I know you're a golfer.
Yeah.
And Sunday for anybody that paid attention, it looked like I was golfing. I mean, it was crazy. I want you to compare it to what it's like in NASCAR when things just, whatever you anticipated just doesn't go your way. And we can talk about that when we come back right here on Backstretch Banter. Stick around. We're back here, Backstretch Banter, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio, Channel 90. Chris Childers, Mike Massaro of RFK. This is your home for Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing each and every week on Sirius XM. This week, RFK goes to Pocono. Number 6 has Build Submarines on the hood, 17 Nextall and Kroger. Scott 1000, the tissue paper, the number 60 will have that on the car on the wrap this weekend. All cars should look really nice as they try to race into victory lane. We're pumped about it, certainly, this weekend. I was watching golf this past weekend along with the race in Mexico with the U.S. Open going on, and I know you're an avid golfer. I don't know if you had a chance to see any of it because of the fact that you were busy in another country, but it got wild on Sunday. It was not nice to the golfers. And I got to imagine that any pro athlete, anybody involved in pro sports can understand what these guys were going through. Like we had leaders from Saturday that nobody gave a damn that they finished on Sunday. That's how weird of a day it was. Is there anything you can put that into perspective with that you've gone through in your career where you were right there and you had a chance and all of a sudden something happened where Mother Nature just had other plans?
Well, I think it's interesting, right? I didn't get to watch a lot of it. I was.
You see the highlights at all?
I saw a lot of the highlights.
Oh my gosh.
And I got a big group text of guys that I play golf with. So like, I have to mute them during the race because it's like it's just out of control because they'll watch the race and they're watching golf and they're telling me what I should be doing and they're telling me what's happening in the golf tournament. I just have to mute it. I'm like, I can't deal with you guys right now. But like, so like I got a text right away. It was like, hey, like the U.S. Open's not over. So I didn't have good enough service to really watch, but I was trying to keep up with what was going on and getting text updates from home. And it's interesting. Like you watch it. And I guess what comes to mind for me is like when it's your day, it's your day. Like JJ starts off 5 over on the front and shoots 40 on the front and then comes back and kind of gets it back going on the back 9. And there was a couple shots. One of the highlights that I saw was on 12 when he barely got it on the green and it left him just a super slick downhill birdie putt that he makes. Well, that's probably the tournament, right? Because if that ball hangs up in the rough or kicks into the bunker, he's definitely not making birdie. He's going to be lucky to make par. That shot was probably the difference in the tournament. And honestly, like there's a little bit of luck involved in that, right? So like it's a good shot. He hit it where he's looking, but like just got onto the green and bounces out of the rough. If it bounces the other way, he's in trouble. And there's times where like you win races where it's like you can do no wrong. Like things like you're honestly trying not to screw it up and your car's just that good and you're trying to like, just get me through the end of the day here without something going wrong because the car's good enough to win. And honestly, Kansas was like that for us this year. Like, it's like, okay, the race started and like we're passing everybody. And next thing you know, like we're running down the leader and blow right retire. And it's like, we just needed the one thing to not happen and we're going to have a great day. And, like on the flip side of it, some of those guys you talked about that like were in contention that fell out of it. It's like, you can't win for losing, right? Like we've had races this year where like, all right, we're going to be aggressive and we're going to pit right here and the caution comes out and then you're trapped a lap down and you got to fight your way back into it the rest of the day, right? So like golf is kind of that way. Like there's times where like you can do everything right and get a bad break and you're out of it. And then there's times where like no matter what you do, you feel you catch a lucky bounce and you're on your way to a good finish. So it's different, but in some ways it's kind of the same.
I don't know how to follow that up. I don't know enough about golf, so I don't have a golf analogy. But I know that Jeremy is
how often does he play? How often do you play?
That's where I'm going with.
Well, so Thursdays are typically the day that I can get out of the shop and try to get out. But even with that, like just depending on the schedule, I'd say every other Thursday probably. And then like this time of year during the summer where it stays light later, I'll try to get 9 in, a night a week or something. So. Not as much as I would like, but as much as I can.
So, Chris, a few weeks ago, we had a man here from TaylorMade Golf who designs golf clubs for some of the biggest professionals on the tour. Rory McIlroy is one of them. And Jeremy was on the panel with him talking about the comparison between developing golf clubs for golfers and developing equipment for race car drivers. There is there's more of a crossover than I ever thought.
Well, you think about like design work in general, right? Like there's a lot of the same tools, whether it be, simulation tools for, we're trying to simulate what happens to the car going around the racetrack. Those guys are trying to simulate what happens when the driver and the ball make contact on the driver face and what a miss hit looks like. And so those guys use all kinds of different simulation tools and whether it be the design tools or the things that our engineers are using to draw parts, or it's very similar software to what they're using to design golf clubs. And so there's the testing that goes into it for them and trying to analyze the data and all the things that go into it. I'm sure there's a ton of crossover.
That's really cool. And you don't think about it, but it makes a lot of sense when you think, there's so much technology and thought that goes into this. And, think about what NASCAR was when it started and where it is now. Think about golf when it started and where it is now. And it might sound stupid to make a comparison like that because it's a metal stick to a lot of people. But as Jeremy, as somebody who plays, technology makes a massive difference in golfing, whether it's the ball, whether it's the club that you use. It really is important.
I think it's sports in general. I think you look at I look at no matter what it is, you look at how, analytics changed baseball forever, right? Like, so a lot of the things that have happened there, the decision-making process changed forever and it's not going back, right? Like it's only going to keep going in that direction. And you look at sports now, the the kids that are playing sports have access to so much technology, and whether it be wearable technology that's tracking their movements and all the things that are out there, like it's nothing like when I was playing Little League, that's for sure. Like there was no TrackMan measuring the bats, exit velocity and all this stuff when I was growing up. Like it was just where it landed was how hard you hit it, right? So I think like sports in general, I think have changed over time, and it's only going to keep going, and what's the next thing, right? And so I think that's the thing for whether it be golf or baseball or whatever sport. It's the same thing with racing. Like we're constantly trying to figure out what's the next thing that we can take advantage of. Like what's the next technology that we can use to make what we're doing better, or make faster cars.
Jeremy Bullins, pleasure to have you today. Good luck in Pocono, and thanks so much for hanging out with us for the hour. We appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
All right, everybody go watch the race this weekend as RFK tries to get into victory lane and get one of our drivers clinched for a playoff spot. In the meantime, we say goodbye for Jeremy, for Mike Massaro. I'm Chris Childers, for Thomas and Elijah and everybody else that helped put the show on, Alex, etc. We appreciate their help as always, and we thank you for listening to Backstretch Banter.